Hi everyone, it's Paola. So I am finally sitting down for the first time in my apartment to film a video. The last one was like moving, so I didn't actually like sit down and set up all my stuff and, you know, have my little sit down moment video that I usually do at my old house. And now I'm in my new apartment. Update, doing great. It's an adjustment, but I'm happy that I'm getting this back to normal, back to my routine. So I'm very excited to be doing another artist series video for you guys. You guys really love it and I really love it too. I'm so glad I thought of this series because I'm having such a good time and it seems like you guys are really responding well to me bringing up artists that you might not know of or you might want to know more about, or now you can just gain this art knowledge. Art history, as you know, is a very big passion of mine, so I'm so glad that we get to talk about artists throughout history, mostly contemporary artists, but I think we'll go back farther as this series continues. So I'm happy that I can teach you guys some art history and just honestly just talk about art, because who doesn't love talking about art? Okay, I'll stop rambling now. So today, for the artist series, we are going to be talking about Yayoi Kusama. So Yayoi Kusama is an installation artist, I would characterize her as. She is a contemporary artist and she's actually still alive. She's 90 years old. But yeah, she was very prominent in like the 60s, 70s, and basically onward from there because she's still doing stuff, but we'll get to that. I want to start by talking about her childhood, and I know I don't really discuss that in some of the artist series videos because I don't really find it that relevant. It's like, okay, yeah, let's talk about their childhood and where they grew up and blah blah blah. I'm really trying to talk about their art, but I feel like her life is really connected to her art and that her beginnings really played a part in who she became and who she is now. So I feel like talking about her childhood is a little needed in this scenario. So she is from Japan. She was born in Japan, and her mother growing up was physically abusive to her, and her father had a lot of affairs and extramarital affairs. So they had a lot of issues within her family, and that's what she saw growing up and was subjected to, and that I think definitely influenced her art later. But also at the age of 13, she had to go to work because it was World War II at this point. So her life was not very easy from the beginning, and even as a child, she did feel like an artist. She was already creating things, but she didn't really get the support like from her mother. Her mother discouraged her from being an artist or being interested in that at all. And at the age of 10, she was experiencing hallucinations where she saw a lot of, you know, dots and spots in her mind, and she would visualize a lot of different things that weren't real. And I think that definitely has to do with some of the trauma that she endured as a child, and that manifested itself in these hallucinations. So after these teenage years of working, she actually did go to art school and she studied painting. And so she became an artist from there, just going out and getting that education, which I think was so great. And she really took hold of her life from there and became the artist that she wanted to be. So very early on in her career, she started doing her big polka dot thing that she is known for. And that I really think has to do with her hallucinations from when she was a child. So that's what she saw, and then that's what she created later. So that was like right away, off the bat, as an artist, she started creating these polka dot works. And she was really interested in branching out of the traditional Japanese style that she had learned her whole life, Japanese ways, Japanese culture, and then art kind of expanded her mind into seeing the world from different viewpoints. So at this point in the 1950s, she's starting to gain traction as an artist and making these infinity nets, as she called them, which were direct associations from her hallucinations into art, into real life artwork. And it was usually installation, sometimes it was painting, sometimes it was on people, kind of in a performative way, and these polka dots really became her thing. So after living in Tokyo and then in France for a little bit. At the age of 27, she decided to move to the United States because that's what she was very interested in, all the art scene happening over there, and she was like ready to be part of it. So at this point in the art industry, there are so many different influential artists that we know today, all working collaboratively together. She was really close with Georgia O'Keeffe, she was close with Ava Hess, people we will probably cover in the future. And she was just really big on the avant-garde scene right off the bat as she started working in the States, because the avant-garde scene was totally up her alley. It was wild, and she was wild, so she fit in right away and was a big pioneer of the avant-garde scene. I know it seems like I'm going through like a timeline, but basically that's how her life kind of is laid out. It's laid out in this frame of reference of the time period and who she was at that time. So in the 1960s, now we're just moving up through the timeline, in the 1960s she started organizing happenings, which happenings, if you do not know, are basically like art shows and art like exhibitions like now, but happenings was a really big thing in the 60s, specifically in the art scene, in various art scenes. But happenings were basically where people would get together, people would create art. It's usually performative. It was a very big collaborative experience, and I feel like the term happenings is just so 1960s. And she was a big organizer of those things, and a lot of times they had political affiliation, like they were protesting something, like in the 60s and 70s they were protesting the Vietnam War specifically, and Yayoi Kusama was right there in that, definitely protesting the Vietnam War. And that was a big thing for artists at that time, to create these happenings, to bring awareness to what they were doing or something that was going on in the world or whatever. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. But throughout these years while she was creating all this amazing work, she still had a lot of issues with how she felt about herself, and her family was not very supportive of her work, which really, really affected her. And also a lot of male artists were taking ideas from her at this time because, you know, she was a woman and it was the 60s, and men feel like they can do whatever they want in that time. Men still feel like they can do whatever they want. Let's not get into that. But she was definitely being taken advantage of in that respect, and her family wasn't supporting her, and she felt alone very easily, and I think she felt isolated. And as an artist, it's definitely understandable. And she did attempt suicide a few times, but I feel like it had to do with a lot of stuff stemming from her childhood and just who she became in her adulthood. And I think what's really great about Yayoi Kusama is that her art really saved her. Her art was something that she could find solace in and find peace within, and I think she found a lot of empowerment in her art. And that's what I really, really want you to take away from this, is that she felt empowered by her work. And I feel like as artists, we all need to feel empowered by our work. Not need to, but we can feel empowered by our work depending on how we create and if we allow ourselves to expand. Does that make sense? I just feel like this empowerment idea is something that I see in her, and I feel like she really, really saved herself with her art. So the 60s were basically her big time of creation, these happenings, this performative aspect, the avant-garde movement. The 60s were her time, I would say, for all of that. And she created a lot of great works during that time. She created a lot of work that had to do with, I would say, phallic shapes. And I think that also has to do with her childhood and seeing her father cheat on her mother and understanding who he was. She like actually saw when he would cheat sometimes. So I feel like that definitely affected her. And just this idea of sexuality and who she was, I feel like that's what she was always exploring and trying to understand. And so she had a lot of really great work in that regard. And then she also had her specific polka dot work that continued on throughout the years, and that was big at that time too. And it was a lot in the 60s, but then in the 70s she ended up moving back to Japan. So in the 1970s she moved back to Japan to focus on her health, and she actually committed herself into a mental institution, and that's where she has lived ever since. So she still lives in this mental institution today. She moved there in the 70s, and that has become her home. And then there she started writing, she started creating a lot more art. She's just always been an artist. I mean, she never stops working. She's still working today at 90 years old. And she actually finally became a really world-renowned artist in the 80s and 90s as she was living in this institution. And that is when she became what we know now as such an influential artist. I would say she already was an influential artist in her own right, but she didn't get the respect that she deserved in the 60s and 70s because those people were taking things from her and they weren't giving her recognition. What the heck? So Yayoi Kusama has definitely been an influential artist to me. She's one of my favorite contemporary artists. And she also is just still doing so many cool things, and I would love to go and experience her work. When I was in LA, I didn't get to go into the room that's one of her infinity rooms because the line was so long, because people really, really love to experience her work, and I totally understand. I get the experience, the experiential aspect of her art. So she has been all over the board. She even has dabbled in fashion. She collaborated with Marc Jacobs on bags in 2011. She's done so much cool stuff in her life, and she's still doing it. Like, she just is amazing to me, and I look up to her so much, and I really feel like she has become such a strong person throughout her life, and I'm so glad that she has lived this long to experience all of that, and that she came through on the other side of all her issues and all her problems and all her past trauma, and really fought through, and I feel like art was a big part of that. So I hope that this video was inspiring to you in some way. She's definitely inspiring to me, and I just love and support her so much. That is Yayoi Kusama. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If this is one of your first videos you're watching of me, please subscribe, and also comment down below who you want to see me do another artist video about, because I will take suggestions and I will look into these artists even if I've never heard of them. And also go watch the other artist series. Why not? Catch up. And I will see you in my next video. Bye. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry I did not create my own work inspired by her in this episode of artist series, but I will do that in my next one. Please just allow me some time. I'm still figuring things out. I still don't have all the things I need to create things. You guys get it. Moving's hard. Thank you for understanding. Bye.